Hello and welcome back to the Pluviophile Papers. Now, we all know Beatrix Potter liked animals. We only have to look through some of her stories to realise that she did. But did you know that Beatrix Potter also kept a large number of pets during her life? The Beatrix Potter books famously feature drawings of animals which have remarkable anatomical precision. Like, they actually do look like these animals. It's not an unrealistic fantasy image of a rabbit, it is an actual anatomical rabbit. And you look at these images and they look like the real things. And this is hardly surprising given that when she was young, when she was a child, she would do these remarkably detailed botanical drawings and animal anatomical drawings. She did these with great accuracy and care. So in particular, she was fascinated by mushrooms. So a lot of her early work is these very detailed drawings of mushrooms. And she also did research into mushrooms. She actually wrote a paper called On the Germination of the Spores of Agaricinae, and this was read aloud at one of these society meetings by Sir Roscoe. But even though she'd written this paper, she wasn't allowed to join the society because she was a woman and women were not permitted to join. And because Beatrix Potter was not university educated and she didn't have a degree, this research was not taken seriously. We do know, however, that it was received well. So there is a quote. Mr. Massey says that it was well received when it was read, and she was asked to make a few edits, at which point they might have published it, but they didn't end up publishing because she didn't make those edits. Anyway, I'm getting off from the point though. The point is that she was interested by animals, and her brother together were very interested by animals, and they were so interested in the anatomy of animals and kind of like the bodies of animals. So they would find kind of carcasses of animals and then they would boil off the flesh so that they could examine the bones. And if you visit Hilltop, her home in the Lake District, which is preserved by the National Trust, then there is this massive cabinet and it's filled with natural specimens that her and her brother collected when they were young. So you've got some of these bones that they boiled down, and also they collected eggshells. Okay, now this video is not going to be a long one. We're not going to go into loads and loads of depth, but I thought you might find it interesting to know that Beatrix Potter did have a number of animals and that she kept them in rather an eccentric manner. So Beatrix Potter grew up in London, and she grew up in a very well-to-do family, and she was a kind of an introvert herself. She was very reclusive. She spent a lot of time in her bedroom, like drawing and keeping little animals. So as a child in her bedroom in London, she kept lizards, snails, bats, mice, rabbits, and other animals aside from that. And there is this wonderful description in the biography by Margaret Lane, which is excellent. It's very, very short, so if you want to learn a bit about Beatrix Potter, I think this is a great place to start. Margaret Lane writes, "She drew and painted the pressed flowers that they had brought home in blotting paper, studied the skeletons of field mice, reared a family of snails in a plant pot, and kept a day-to-day record of their lives. And soon there was a pair of mice concealed in a box, and fed on milk and cracker crumbs after supper, and a rabbit, which was supposed to live in a hutch in the back garden, but which was generally stretched in civilised ease on the hearth rug, blinking at the fire, and bats, which hung upside down in a parrot cage and came zigzagging across the room at dusk and settled on her fingers, and a hedgehog called Tiggy, who drank out of a doll's teacup and eventually sickened and was buried with dreadful tears in the back garden." And you get a sense here of just how much Beatrix Potter's childhood was centred around these animals. I also read that on the train they would bring up their parrot cage of bats, and it's just such a wonderful image to think of, like this train platform with Beatrix and Bertram with all of their animals around them. So again, I'm going to read from Margaret Lane's biography. This is kind of as she becomes a young woman. Quote, "The only change that we see now that she has ceased to be merely Beatrix and has become Miss Potter," you know, as she grows up, it becomes proper to call her Miss Potter, "is that her luggage has become a little odd. It's on the way to being eccentric. Beside the long serge skirts, the sensible boots, the practical umbrella, there stands on the station platform, as often as not, a travelling rabbit hutch." And in one letter, Beatrix Potter writes, "Now I am packing up for another journey on Tuesday, and wondering how everything was stuffed in when we came. The rabbit hutch is a great resource upon such occasions. It is surprising what it will hold." So the rabbit hutch had become like another case, like a storage case where she'd put books or she'd put, you know, gloves, and then she'd hold the rabbit. So she'd be holding a rabbit and then she'd have this bag which was just a rabbit hutch. She would travel with her rabbit. She would also travel with her pet mouse, Hunca Munca. Of course, the name is recognisable from the story. She writes in one letter, quote, "Hunca Munca is very discontented in the small old box. I am also accompanied by Mrs. Tiggy, which is her hedgehog, carefully concealed. My aunt cannot endure animals. I've got my hedgehog with me here too. She enjoys but going by train. She is always very hungry when she is on a journey. I carry her in a little basket." And I love this image of Beatrix Potter turning up at the station with a rabbit, with a mouse hidden in a box, with the hedgehog carried in this little basket. It's just such a beautiful image. I just wanted to read you this letter too because it demonstrates how Beatrix Potter became known for keeping pets. So someone clearly has written here about asking, do you have any advice for keeping rabbits? And this is what she replies with. "My first rabbit Bounce was exceedingly affectionate with myself, but suspicious, like a dog, of new servants or strange workmen in the house, at whom he would growl, the ordinary conversational noise being a low grunt. They can be taught tricks, playing tambourine and ringing a bell. I think their drawback as pets is that, although easily trained to cleanliness, they cannot be broken of the habit of nibbling. Moreover, there is the risk of being injured or killed by strange dogs. I would warn your correspondent against giving his hair lump sugar or hard comforts. I do not think the molar teeth grow again if broken, and as they cannot be reached owing to the smallness of the animal's mouth, it may suffer agonies from toothache. My rabbit Bounce came to a premature end through persistent devotion to peppermints, which he begged from an old Scotch gamekeeper. I could feel the broken tooth with my finger but could not get it out. He was not a healthy animal, and the toothache ended in a tumour, so he had to be destroyed." And though we don't know the exact context of that letter, we can see that somebody's asked Beatrix Potter about the practice of keeping rabbits, which shows that she was known for the fact that she kept animals and pets. Anyway, I hope that you learned something new. I find Beatrix Potter's life absolutely fascinating. She is one of my favourite historic figures, and yeah, I hope you learned something new. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a lovely day.